This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Former Ugandan rebel commander Dominic Ongwen found guilty of war crimes and crimes against humanity. Ethiopia arrests 15 people on charges of planning to attack the UAE embassy in Addis Ababa. And South Sudan imposes a strict lockdown as COVID-19 cases keep rising. Welcome to Africa Live on CGTN with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. The details on those stories in just a moment, but first, here's Ramanyang with the day's business headlines. Rama.
That's right, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. Kenyan flour exporters are bracing for a sales surge ahead of Valentine's season. And after the COVID-19 pandemic decimated diamond sales and revenue, Botswana is now looking to diversify its sources of government revenue. Details on those stories and lots more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Beatrice.
Rama, thank you. Former Ugandan warlord Dominic Ongwen has been convicted of war crimes and crimes against humanity at the International Criminal Court. Ongwen is a former commander of the rebel group, the Lord's Resistance Army. He has been found guilty of 61 out of 70 alleged crimes. Ongwen was also convicted for the crime of forced pregnancy for atrocities committed against 7 women. The case presented a dilemma to the ICC as he appeared to be both the victim and the alleged perpetrator. Ongwen claims he was abducted by the LRA and forced to be a child soldier before rising up in the ranks. Well, Dominic Ongwen is one of the highest profile suspects netted by the ICC as he was the second in command of the Lord's Resistance Army. The militia unleashed violence and terror in Uganda for years under the leadership of Joseph Kony. CGTN's Jen Keo has a story.
Just before he flew out to The Hague from Uganda in February 2015, Dominic Ongwen spoke to the media. He told them, and I quote, "If I committed a crime through war, I am sorry. In my mind, I thought war was the best thing." That's the classic mindset of a former child soldier and has been the basis of Ongwen's defense. Ongwen had been kidnapped at just 10 and forced into the LRA ranks. But he rose rapidly, a major at 18, a brigadier by his late 20s, and a close confidant of Joseph Kony. Murder, mutilation, sexual violence, child kidnapping, all of them form part of Ongwen's lengthy charge sheet. In total, he faces up to 70 counts of war crimes and crimes against humanity and could be imprisoned for life if convicted. In 2005, he was the youngest person indicted by the ICC, but he spent 10 years evading authorities and says he only gave himself up because he fell out with Kony. The LRA leader suspected his one-time friend wanted amnesty. While Kony is still on the run, on Thursday, Ongwen's fate could be sealed. He once told Ugandan media, "I was captured at a tender age and went there as someone who was blind and deaf. It's the same way in which I returned. I hope my good intention will be reciprocated by the responsible authorities." So Ongwen, who's now 45, is saying he too is a victim and he's hoping the court will agree. Jane Keo, CGTN.
Well, I'll now cross over to Amsterdam for more on this. I'm joined by Stefan de Vries. He's in Amsterdam for us. Stefan, it's quite a significant verdict there. Can you break it down for us?
It is indeed, and it is a very long list of accusations of crimes against humanity. Of course, Dominic Ongwen is found guilty of allegedly 4,000 murders, but also of a long list of sexual crimes. He abducted and forced 7 women into his household, and their names are mentioned in the judgment. He then forced them into sexual slavery, enslavement, tortured them, raped them, and he also did this with a certain number of women and girls in his brigade. And then lastly, he also forced young children to take part in his army, children under 15 years old. So this is a very long list of war crimes, crimes against humanities, of which the International Crime Court in The Hague today found Dominic Ongwen guilty.
So it is a long list of accusations against Ongwen, but he has not been sentenced as yet. So what happens next?
Well, the defense has been pleading that Ongwen himself, is a victim. He claimed that he was abducted when he was 10 or 12 years old on his way to school, and then he became a war criminal. Now, the judge will take this into account, but he also said that Dominic Ongwen was fully aware of what he did as soon as he was older than 18 years old. So he is accountable for his acts. The defense hopes that the judges will take the circumstances into account to maybe soften his sentence. But Dominic Ongwen is facing life imprisonment, and the sentence will be pronounced probably in the next couple of weeks.
All right,
back to you.
Stefan de Vries joining us there from Amsterdam, from the International Criminal Court. Let's now cross over to Tom Maliti. He's in Nairobi with us here. He's a trial monitor with the International Justice Monitor. It has been a long wait for victims of the LRA. Tom, what exactly, how has justice been served?
Hello, Beatrice, and thank you for inviting me to your news bulletin. Justice has been served for the small pool of victims who were involved in this particular trial. I wouldn't say that justice has been served for all the victims of the LRA atrocities that were committed over 20 years, between 1986 and 2006 or thereabouts. So this just represents a small token of justice, as it were, from the International Criminal Court.
So the LRA's top in command, Joseph Kony, is yet to be apprehended and tried. Has the international community done enough to bring him to justice, though?
I think the international community invested quite a lot in military terms, because at one point we had United States Special Forces, we had Ugandan troops searching specifically for Joseph Kony and other top leaders of the LRA. Once they dispersed from northern Uganda after 2008 and ended up somewhere in the regions of Central African Republic and neighboring countries of Congo and now South Sudan. And they spent several years, as much as 6 years, searching for Joseph Kony. But they apparently were not able to find him and decided to leave. Beyond that, I don't know what the international community could do in military terms. There are those who would argue that maybe the military option needs to be rethought and a different approach needs to be taken.
All right, Tom Maliti joining us there via Zoom. Now, 15 people who are said to be plotting to attack the UAE embassy in Ethiopia are to appear in an Addis Ababa court after being arrested by Ethiopian intelligence on Tuesday. The suspects allegedly planned the attack on the diplomatic mission, with individuals said to be abroad. The CGTN's Girum Chala tells us a similar plot targeting the UAE embassy in Khartoum was also foiled by Ethiopian and Sudanese intelligence officials working together.
The National Intelligence and Security Services say it has been trailing the now apprehended suspects for weeks. Its officers foiled the intended attack on the United Arab Emirates embassy here in Addis Ababa. The 15 plotters and accomplices now are under investigation by NIS and the Federal Police of Ethiopia, pending a court appearance in the coming few days. So far, the investigation has found out that the suspects had arms, explosives and some documents in their possession to be used in the planned attack. The reports also say that the arrested individuals were working with other suspects abroad. Most of them were in Europe. They are now also under custody after joint work between agencies there and the Ethiopian Intelligence Agency. On the other hand, the Ethiopian National Intelligence and Security Services said another plot to bomb the UAE embassy in Khartoum was foiled through its joint efforts with Sudanese intelligence authorities. They said the Ethiopian and Sudanese security agencies were working tirelessly for days before they succeeded in disabling the terror network. Group Tara CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
To Nigeria now, and a market fire in Abuja has left at least 6 people dead and several others injured. The outbreak at Tipa Market in Abuja's Gwarinpa district was reportedly caused by a spark in one of the shops in the early hours of Thursday morning. Local media reports that the market was engulfed in flames for 2 hours before firefighters came to the rescue. Still in West Africa, 10 Malian troops have been killed in Boni village in the central region after their camp came under fire from jihadists. According to security sources, several soldiers were also injured in the attack. Authorities also say the camp has been seriously damaged, with assailants having made off with equipment. China is once again stressing it will firmly defend its territorial sovereignty after an American warship sailed through the Taiwan Strait on Thursday. It is the first such voyage since President Joe Biden was inaugurated. CGTN's Xiang Xungying has more.
China is ready to cope with any threat at any time. This was the message from Beijing after a U.S. Navy sent a missile destroyer through the Taiwan Strait on Thursday. It's the first time an American warship passed through the waterway, which separates the Chinese mainland and Taiwan, since President Joe Biden took office last month.
China firmly defends its territorial sovereignty. We hope that the United States would play a constructive role when it comes to maintaining peace and stability in the region, rather than going the other way around.
The U.S. Navy says the transit is in accordance with international law, and that the U.S. military will continue to operate anywhere the law allows. Just one day earlier, Washington had this to say when asked about its support for the One China policy.
Yes, the answer is that our policy has not changed. It has not changed.
The One China principle maintains that the island of Taiwan is an inalienable part of China. The policy was challenged under former U.S. President Trump when his administration approved sales of military hardware to Taipei. Some high-level U.S. envoys were also sent to Taiwan for official visits under Trump. China has slammed all moves, stressing its resolve and ability to defeat any foreign interference and separatist attempts. Zheng Chunying, CGTN.
The United States and Russia have announced that they have extended the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty Agreement for 5 years. The new START agreement will preserve the last treaty and limit deployments of the world's 2 largest strategic nuclear arsenals. China's ambassador to the UN-sponsored Conference on Disarmament, Li Song, has welcomed the bilateral agreement, noting that the US and Russia are the largest nuclear powers in the world. China hopes to work on a basis of parity and mutual respect with all nuclear powers. The Russian Federation and the United States will engage in a bilateral dialogue on security, strengthening mutual security measures, boosting transparency and trust. The United Nations highest court will hear a case brought by Iran against the United States over sanctions imposed by the Trump administration. In last year's hearings, lawyers for the U.S. requested judges at the International Court of Justice to drop the case. But the court on Wednesday said it did have the jurisdiction to hear the case. Iran took the U.S. to court in 2018 after then-President Donald Trump said he was pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal and would reimpose sanctions on Tehran. The U.S. State Department on Wednesday said it was disappointed by the court's decision. A final ruling from the court may take years. Earlier, we spoke to Abbas Aslani from the Center for Middle Eastern Strategic Studies on how the case could impact bilateral relations.
Well, maybe this is the first ICJ ruling that applies to the Biden administration. But Iran and the United States, they do not have direct diplomatic relations. So, despite this treaty amity, which was clinched between both countries in 1955, it doesn't seem to have that much of qualitative impact between the relations of these 2 countries, which they do not have any ties. But if you're referring maybe to a likely engagement on the Iran and the US on the nuclear program, and meaning the JCPOA, Iran has said that it is suing against the United States independent of the nuclear deal, and this has nothing to do with the JCPOA. So even in the case of any engagement between Tehran and Washington on the nuclear issue, I don't think Iran will stop this case in the court, and it will continue to argue against the sanctions of the United States. And in addition to the Iranian case, I think this case can have some effect and impact on the legality and implementation of the United States secondary sanctions in the public international law, independent of Iran.
Myanmar has blocked access to Facebook and its other services like Instagram and WhatsApp. The government ordered internet providers to block the social networking sites, saying it was for the country's stability. Nearly half the country's population uses Facebook. Earlier this week, the country's military seized power and detained State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi and President Win Myint. Around 70 Myanmar lawmakers defied the new military government by convening a symbolic meeting of the parliament. Activists say at least 3 people have been arrested during protests in the country's second biggest city, Mandalay. And medical workers announced they were going on strike on Wednesday to protest the takeover. There was also a rally of army supporters in the capital. You're watching Africa Live, still ahead on the program. South Sudan imposes a strict lockdown as COVID-19 cases keep rising. And we look at how the coronavirus pandemic has affected learning in Kenyan schools.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Ethiopia,
Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Sixteen African countries have shown interest in securing COVID-19 vaccines under an African Union initiative. That's according to the head of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Dr. John Nkesagong. The body's aim is to deliver allocations in the next 3 weeks. As wealthier nations push ahead with mass immunization, Africa is seeking to immunize 60% of its 1.3 billion people in the next 3 years. Only a handful of African nations have begun giving out doses. The African Union initially secured 270 million doses from manufacturers for its member states. Late last month, the AU announced it would receive another 400 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine. Well, Uganda has ordered 18 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine from India. The COVID-19 shots will be procured from the Serum Institute of India. The shipments are expected to arrive in the country by the end of March. Here's CGTN's Hilary Ayesiga.
A move to contain the COVID-19 pandemic, Ugandan authorities are procuring vaccines.
The Ministry of Health, working together with the national medical stores, has placed an order for 18 million doses of AstraZeneca vaccine from the Serum Institute of India, which will be used to vaccinate persons from the age of 50 years and above.
It will cost the Ugandan government $17 to vaccinate every person eligible for the treatment. The country is also due to receive another 3.5 million doses via the COVAX program, which was set up by the World Health Organization to help poor and middle-income countries access the coronavirus vaccine. Ugandan health workers say the first batch of vaccines will be used to treat the elderly, persons with underlying health conditions, and first responders, among others. Unlike its East African neighbors, Uganda has been spared the worst of the virus. the country has so far recorded over 39,000 cases and more than 300 deaths, a figure much lower than Kenya, which has recorded over 100,000 cases. Ugandan scientists attribute the progress to increased testing capabilities, contact tracing, and treatment of those found positive.
We had all the facilities to look after our cases. That's why we registered significant improvement. That's why the country has been high rank among the 10 globally, because we suppressed the transmission of COVID-19 by the end of August.
But this success could be short-lived as the country continues to register a spike in cases.
If we don't change our mindsets, we don't really reflect and follow the standard operating procedures, we shall not be far from what we've seen from other parts of the country. So the worst case scenario is yet to come. That's why I'm here, that's why you are there. We don't want Uganda to reach to such a situation. We want to prevent people from dying.
And as they wait for the vaccines to arrive in the country, the government is urging the locals to wash their hands frequently with soap, wear masks, and practice social distancing. With these health precautions, local authorities hope to curb the spread of the virus. Hilary Isiga, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
In neighboring South Sudan, the country has entered a strict lockdown on Wednesday as the government tries to curb a sharp increase in COVID-19 infections. All schools, places of worship, social gatherings and shops selling non-essential items have been shut down for the next month. CGTN's Patrick Oyet reports.
The South Sudanese government says the lockdown is necessary as the number of confirmed COVID-19 cases climbs well past 4,200. The health ministry believes the number could actually be much higher as limited testing capacity makes mass testing all but impossible. Under the lockdown, social gatherings are banned, schools and shops closed, but people can still travel in and out of the country as long as they have a certificate to show that they tested negative for COVID-19. The health ministry says it has also increased surveillance on the reported new COVID-19 variants in other countries.
With the samples sent to Uganda for more analysis for possibility of capturing the new variant is also in place to make sure we are up to date.
The World Health Organization ranks South Sudan among countries with the least developed health infrastructure. Increase in the number of cases of COVID-19 could overwhelm the health infrastructure. WHO promises to continue supporting South Sudan's health ministry.
I would like to reaffirm WHO's commitment to the health of the people and will continue to avail support within our mandate to improve the health services of the people of South Sudan.
South Sudan's government is urging employers to encourage their staff to work from home. The public is being urged to observe precautionary measures such as wearing face masks, observing social distancing and avoiding handshakes to try and prevent the spread of COVID-19. The lockdown is meant to last a month, but the health ministry is already warning that it could be extended if new infections aren't brought under control. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
A new report is raising doubts about the preparedness of pupils in their final year of primary school education in Kenya to sit for the forthcoming national examinations. The report released by the Kenya National Examination Council shows that a majority of learners in Standard 8 failed the national assessment exercise, which was conducted last October. The examinations body attributes the poor performance to disruption of face-to-face learning due to the COVID-19 pandemic. CGTN's Wilkis Tanyabwa has the details.
In October 2020, as a section of learners returned to school, the Kenya National Examinations Council conducted assessments to establish the performance levels of Standard 8 candidates. This came after the prolonged closure of schools owing to the pandemic. The results have highlighted several gaps and losses that occurred as students missed out on face-to-face lessons. One of the major findings of the study is that at the time of the assessment, majority of Class 8 learners performed below average. Although some of the subjects registered near normal scores, the mean scores of others were lower than the expected mean of 50%. For instance, in mathematics, English composition and Kiswahili essays, only 34.5, 39.9 and 45.1% of the learners respectively attained at least 50% of the total mark. Social studies, Kiswahili language, mathematics and Kenyan Sign Language reported mean scores which were lower than the expected mean of 50 at 49.5% and 48.9, 44.8 and 43.3% respectively. This pointed to low mastery of specific skills and content. It was also established that pupils in private schools registered higher mean scores than their counterparts in public schools in all the assessed subjects. This could be indicative of better access to remote learning during closure of schools. Education Cabinet Secretary George Magoha has, however, sought to ease the concerns.
Considering that Standard 8 and Form 4 learners have been in school for more than 14 weeks, since that time, I am more than confident, having taught for 43 years, that the learning interventions by teachers have helped these children to recover the lost time, like I have said in many other fora.
The Kenya Certificate of Primary Education examinations, which mark the end of primary school learning in Kenya, are set to begin in March. Wilkis Anyabwa, CGTN.
Well, let's hear more now from Wilkista Nyabwa. She's joining us from here in Nairobi. Wilkista, just how dire is the situation in Kenyan schools?
Well, Beatrice, the situation has to be taken in context. For example, we do know that the students sat these examinations last year after they had reported to school. It was the Standard 4, Standard 8 and Form 4 candidates who are allowed in school because they would be sitting the national examinations marking the end of a certain phase. And therefore, these examinations were done last October, just after the students had reported to school, so that teachers could assess the impact of about 7 months out of school. So we are getting the results of exams that were done last year. And as the Cabinet Secretary for Education has said, that basically these exams were done last year. Since then, students have been in class for about 3 months, and that the findings of this report were able to guide teachers because they could then tell in which subjects their learners were weak. Actually, if you look at the breakdown of the report, it goes not just from subject to subject, but through different topics in different subjects, just highlighting which topics the learners understood well and in which topics they needed a bit more revision, perhaps a bit more explanation and a few more exercises so that they could be conversant with those subjects. So the Cabinet Secretary, they're saying that in those 3 months they have really made an effort to catch up, and that they do have until next month to sit those examinations. So that is also still a bit more time to revise. And in addition, these exams are not just important for the candidates who will be sitting their end of primary school examinations, but they also give insights into how other pupils, other learners who also missed more time because they were out of school until the end of the year, and just how that might have impacted them and what kind of interventions they need in order to catch up. Beatrice.
Well, Kistanyabwa there for us. Well, in the central part of Kenya, a school is giving teenage mothers and pregnant girls a second chance to finish their education. Many of them lost the opportunity to pursue proper education when they fell pregnant. CGTN's Tulisha Balala has more.
This is Serene Haven Secondary. The school is nestled into a hill below Mount Kenya. 19-year-old mother Josephine Wanjiru is among the 17 teenage mothers and pregnant girls attending class to finish their education. Josephine has been out of school ever since getting pregnant 2 years ago.
It's my aunt, the one who paid the school fees, called me. It was on December, and she asked me, Josephine, what do you think about your life? And if you can get another chance, can you go back to school? I said yes, I can go back to school. We had started looking for a day school.
The school is enabling Josephine to achieve her dream of joining the health sector.
I have a dream of becoming a nurse when I grow up. Yeah. And I'm sure that my dream is going to come true.
Former social worker Elizabeth Wanjiru Muriyoki founded this boarding school, which includes daycare and counseling services.
Every girl who comes here, I especially those, there are some who come and they are really downcast. They feel like this is the end of the world. So I first start with giving them my story. Some of them have even met my son, the boy I had in my teenage. So they are really encouraged. They are like, if you could do it, we can also do it.
Stigma, logistics and money compel around 13,000 pregnant girls to drop out of school annually. Serene Haven opened its doors in January this year when Kenyan schools reopened following months of closure due to the coronavirus pandemic. The lockdown, though, fueled an increase in adolescent pregnancies.
We only have 3 babies who are over 1 year old. The rest of the babies and the pregnant girls, it all happened during the COVID time. So out of the 17, you see 14 girls got pregnant during COVID period.
Muriyoki herself is a former teen mom who finished school and built a career. She hopes her story and her school will inspire and encourage the students to work for a brighter future. Thuli Shabalala, CGTN.
The Chinese embassy in Kenya has sent its greetings to overseas Chinese in the country. The embassy also sent some New Year gifts to the Chinatown in the capital city, Nairobi, where most of the Chinese people visit from time to time. According to the Chinese ambassador to Kenya, Zhu Pingjuan, the past year has been a hard one for most of the overseas Chinese in Kenya due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The gifts are to serve as gratitude to the Chinese people in Kenya who have actively participated in the local community's fight against the pandemic.
Together with some entrepreneur representatives, we choose to send our wishes as well as some gifts today at this time because we just want to show them that the embassy cares for them all the time and wishes them a happy new year so that they don't feel that lonely at this particular time.
Let's now go to Rama Nyang for a look at the day's business news. Rama.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in business. Kenyan flour exporters are bracing themselves for a sales surge ahead of Valentine's Day. And after the pandemic decimated diamond revenues, Botswana is now looking to diversify its economy.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back to the program. Now, the rollout of COVID-19 vaccinations in developed countries is providing a glimmer of hope to Kenya's flour sector as Valentine's season approaches. A survey by Kenya's Monetary Policy Committee shows that the export orders of Kenyan flours does remain relatively strong. And that's despite all the uncertainty caused by a rise in new infections, the discovery of new variants of the virus, and the possibility of future lockdowns in key export markets, especially those in Europe. According to the survey, the current production levels of flours on Kenyan farms is back to about 90% of pre-pandemic levels as target markets reopen their economies. The average orders for the next 4 months are also expected to be roughly 97% of a pre-pandemic baseline. Elsewhere, Botswana's head of state, Mokgweetsi Masisi, says it's more imperative than ever for the Southern African nation to diversify into other commodities, and that's after a fairly difficult year for the diamond market hit government revenue. The COVID-19 pandemic aggravated weaknesses in the diamond sector, which accounts for about 80% or so of Botswana's export earnings in 2020. The world's second largest diamond producer is now looking to diversify into other minerals like coal, of which it has an estimated 212 billion tons, most of which is untapped. Assisi says that the government is talking to its neighbours about further developing the infrastructure needed to mine and export that fossil fuel. State-owned Morupule coal mine, for example, is developing a mine that will boost annual output by over a third this year alone. The private coal miner Miniji also started exporting coal to South Africa, a big market for that fuel, in mid-2020. Now, the African Continental Free Trade Area finally came into effect, formally at least, on the 1st of January. The CFTA aims to drastically increase intra-African trade by slashing tariffs on several categories of goods by approximately 90% and harmonizing trading rules at a continental level. CGTN's Yasser Kim caught up with Dr. Amani Asfour. She was recently voted in as the president of the Africa Business Council. In this conversation, they explore what is needed to make the CFTA achieve these ambitious goals.
The Africa Business Council is established by the Decision Summit of the African Heads of States. It's as an organized private sector. It's an inclusive business council that includes all the regional economic blocs. We intend actually to have our strategic plan to see how we involve, to have all the private sector in the continent to make sure that first we have an advocacy campaign that we are leading currently for public procurement, how our African continents, our African governments would procure from African private sector. That's one. Number two is build the capacity of our African private sector for industrialization.
What are the main challenges that face the private sector when trying to expand within the continent? And you as a businesswoman probably has faced it yourself.
There are several challenges that is really on different levels. If we're talking about the infrastructure, which is a very important, and it's very important because we need roads, we need networks, we need maritime, we need aviation, so we need technological infrastructure with reference to our IT communications. We need political engagement, public-private sector partnerships, and most always is information, because as we all know that we have lack of missing information across the whole over the private sector. How do we achieve the business linkages? How to make sure of an inventory of their existing resources on the continent?
How do you see Egypt's role in trying to lead some of these initiatives or trying to expand or increase trade and production and investments within the continent as well?
Now, Egypt has also a great role to play because we have in Egypt there is a lot of scientific experience that can be promoted to our African continent and exported to start industrialization within the continent, to start investment. Even and there is now an academy at the Arab Organization for Industrialization that is training our African sisters and brothers in the private sector for electronic machineries. In Egypt, we have a lot of industries that could be exported to our African continent and invested in. We have 480 industries for medical consumables and supplies, 165 pharmaceutical industries.
You've been the president of the COMESA Business Council. What will happen with the COMESA and the Business Council now that we have the ACFTA?
COMESA Business Council is 21 countries, Common Market for East and Southern Africa. Under the ACFTA, we will have actually a pure harmonization among the REX business councils. This will be coordination among our business council, Economic States for West Africa. They have already harmonized a lot, and they also have at least one currency. So it is building blocks for the ACFTA. It's complementing each other.
Thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure talking to you today.
On to East Africa now. Tanzania's government says the construction of the first phase of the standard gauge rail line it's building is nearly wrapped up. The line runs from Dar es Salaam to Morogoro. It's expected to be operational in a few months' time. The project is being implemented in 5 phases. It aims to link Tanzania to her neighbours to the west, Rwanda, Uganda, Burundi and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Here's CGTN's Daniel Kijo with the details.
Tanzania's standard gauge railway project is the biggest in the country's history. The 2,500-kilometer project is intended to replace the country's meter gauge network built in the colonial era. At a cost of $6.7 billion, the railway development is expected to improve trade within the East African region.
The first phase of the project, meaning from Dar to Morogoro, which is about 300 kilometers, is at 90%, and we are now finalizing the last few details. The second phase, from Morogoro to Makatapora in Singida, is 422 kilometers. As you know, this passes by Dodoma. That lot is 55% completed.
This first phase will see the first regional station come into operation. The Morogoro SGR station will be able to handle 800 passengers a day and park more than 150 cars and motorcycles. When complete, the first phase will reduce the traveling time from Dar es Salaam to Morogoro from 3 hours to 1.5 hours.
In a few months, hundreds of passengers will commute through this station. The government says that along with improving its transportation network, this project aims to provide employment as well as offer investment opportunities.
Tanzania largely depends on road networks for cargo transportation. Much of the cargo will now be moved by rail. Engineers say the train is designed to transport more than 10,000 tons of freight at a time. This is equivalent to 500 cargo trucks.
So our purpose is to make as a logistic cheapest to transport those resources from Dar es Salaam to upcountry, and also natural resource from Congo DRC, which are rich in natural resource, and the other neighbors to Port of Dar es Salaam. So our strategic first is to transport cargoes, then to give a service to passenger trains.
Upon completion, the SGR project is expected to pay back the investment within 15 years. The railway will be East Africa's fastest and will be powered by electricity.
The purpose of using this electrical energy is to make sure that we are providing a service at a low cost, because we have energy in Tanzania which is produced from our own resources.
The railway has a lifespan of more than 200 years. The Tanzanian government believes it will play an important role in helping the country reach its industrialization vision by 2025. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Up north, Tunisia is planning to issue debt worth up to $3 billion this year as it looks to stabilize its economy. The North African state is embarking on a range of economic reforms amid rising protests caused by years of economic slowdowns and, of course, all the disruption caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. From Tunis, here's CGTN's Adin Chouachi.
The Minister of Economy and Finance declared that the government plans to go to the international market since the 2021 state budget needs financing in order to push reforms and achieve Tunisia's economic targets. Authorities are seeking a new $1 billion loan guarantee arrangement from the United States, which could help it secure the $3 billion in bond issuance.
This year we have a bond that was issued with the United States guarantee that will be repaid in May and June. As much as we would like to reimburse it on time, and we will do, we will also keep talking with the investors in order to ask them to still be confident in Tunisia and to reinvest in new bonds that could be backed by US guarantee. And we are in the process of discussing that.
Tunisia's 2021 budget forecasts borrowing needs $7.2 billion, including about $5 billion in foreign loans. Ali Khali added that the Tunisian government will launch an economic and financial roadshow in Asia this year.
This new Tunisia will be also a friend of Asia. And we are planning also to address to Asian investors and to see what they could do to invest in Tunisia, whether to invest in some bond issues or to invest in real projects. And we are in the process of finalizing a list of projects, and we will keep visiting many countries in Asia in order to present this program and in order to find the right support from our friends there.
The Tunisian parliament has approved the government's plans. Members of the Finance Commission have said that the state needs foreign financial support to foster the resilience of the national economy.
The financial situation in Tunisia is very difficult. The state needs additional resources to kickstart its economic reforms. This is vital for public finances. The efforts of the Finance Ministry are considerable. Parliament is backing the government's economic orientation.
The House of People's Representatives adopted the draft law approving a €100 million loan agreement between Tunisia and the German Bank for Reconstruction on financing the program to support reforms in the banking and financial sector. The Parliament also approved the €150 million loan contract with the German Development Bank to consolidate public sector reforms. With a deficit estimated at 11.5% of gross domestic product in 2020 and public debt at 90% of GDP, Tunisia is facing an unprecedented economic crisis which has been deepened by the negative repercussions of the COVID-19 pandemic. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has had an enormous impact on the auto industry. Sales in key markets did decline in factories or forced to close in some cases. Here's CGTN's Juliet Mann examining how the UK and China's automotive sectors are driving growth in some pretty challenging conditions.
While the coronavirus hammered UK car manufacturing and demand, sales in China are recovering.
As far as global demand is concerned, of course, China is the one that came out of this first. And today, China would represent about 20% of our global sales. So it is very, very significant. The Bentley brand fits very well with our Chinese customers.
The automotive sector already had some loose wheels. Technological change, green challenges, a shift in ideas about mobility, and in the UK, Brexit.
4 out of 5 cars made in Britain are exported, half to the EU. So striking a deal with Brussels is key to the car industry here. But as Britain's third biggest car export destination after the EU and the United States, China is an important market with big potential. That's why many UK car manufacturers have set up shop in China too.
China is, the biggest car market in the world and one of the biggest markets for the premium and luxury brands in the UK in particular. So if you think of, Rolls-Royce, Bentley, companies like Jaguar Land Rover, this is a hugely important market for them. Jaguar Land Rover might sell only 20% of its cars in China, but maybe 50% of its profit comes from China. So it's absolutely critical for the firm that the Chinese market recovers. So, the UK and China are really interlinked when it comes to the automotive industry.
Britain has engineering and academic expertise. China is an important manufacturing hub, sales market and funder. The London Electric Vehicle Group, who make London's black cabs, is owned by China's Geely Group. Volvo Cars, Lotus and Proton are also part of Geely's fleet. And going electric could mean more opportunities for China in the UK.
Big investment has gone into various European countries in battery manufacturing on a really big scale. The UK is lagging behind. It really does need to attract a big battery manufacturer. Now, several of those are Chinese. There is a potential deal to be done there.
It's a bumpy road post-pandemic and post-Brexit. But as they lead innovation and help build investment, the UK and China's automotive relationship is gearing up for growth.
Juliet Mann, CGTN, London.
Now, speaking of bumpy roads, let's focus on what's coming up at the top of the hour. In global business, we'll be looking at COVAX. It's released its initial vaccine distribution schedule. But how prepared are countries on the continent to actually roll out their vaccination programs? We'll look at a case study of Nigeria at the top of the hour. See you at 1800 GMT. For now, back to Beatrice.
Rama, thank you. And we still have more news for you here on the program. Here's what's coming up in your sports segment. Defending champions Morocco eliminate hosts Cameroon to book a CHAN final clash against Mali.
How would you create your legend? On the fields,
on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
We begin with football, where holders Morocco have defeated the hosts of the African Nations Championship, Cameroon, in the semi-final of the tournament. The Atlas Lions beat the Indomitable Lions 4-0 in a one-sided match to set up a final against Mali. CGTN Sadiq Shaban has more from Douala.
It has been a difficult night for millions of Cameroonians watching their team tonight, failing to progress to the finals of the African Nations Championship. Hosting this tournament for the first time, the Indomitable Lions had hoped to go all the way to the finals, but Morocco had other ideas during this semi-final clash. Hundreds of football fans who had gathered here to watch this tie started leaving midway through the match when their team went 2-0 down in halftime, and they watched in disbelief as the Indomitable Lions failed to counter the Moroccan side, who have now qualified for their second consecutive final, where they will play Mali on Sunday.
Indomitable Lions are playing well, but a level is higher for them. And against, you see, Moroccan people or Moroccan football is very, very good.
It was not easy. It wasn't easy even though we won. We were greatly advantaged by the first 2 goals, but we are thrilled to progress to the end of this tournament.
Mali had played Guinea in the West African Derby earlier on in the evening, and both teams shared the spoils after regular and regulation time. But Mali went on to win 5-4 in penalty shootout to make their second final in the history of this competition. So Cameroon and Guinea will play in the 3rd and 4th playoff match on Saturday, while Morocco will meet Mali in the final of this tournament on Sunday. Sadiq Shaban, CGTN, in Yaoundé, Cameroon.